Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the Week 17 waiver wire targets. So, for many of you who do play in Week 17 fantasy championship games, I've had my fair share of words on the matter. I don't really particularly like playing in a Week 17 waiver wire. We'll get into that later, but either way, I'm here to help you guys capture your championships if, in fact, you are playing in a Week 17, championship game. So on today's episode, I'm going to be going over the running back, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end positions, and the waiver wire targets at each of those. I'll also be going over a little bit of a defensive waiver wire pickups for streaming defenses and talking about other stuff for this coming week. But either way, that's pretty much it. So let's get right into it, shall we? Hey, everybody. How's it going? All right. So to begin this episode, we're going to change it up a little bit. I just want to talk about three specific teams. The New Orleans Saints, the Dallas Cowboys, and the Seattle Seahawks. Now, why am I, highlighting these specific teams? Well, due to their current records, these three teams do not have to play in Week 17. This is generally the reason why I don't want to play in a Week 17 championship. It's because, the New Orleans Saints, they have captured the number one seed in the NFC, and whether they win or lose this coming Sunday, they are still going to be the number one seed. So what does that force them to do? They're going to rest their starters. You will not have Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, Drew Brees, and majority of any other piece contributing to this offense this coming Sunday. All of them will be replaced. And for those of you who are in a championship game this coming week, you won't be able to use them. So it's extremely unfortunate, but that's usually the main argument on why you don't want to play in a Week 17 championship. On the other hand, we have the Dallas Cowboys. They, no matter whether they win or lose, they're going to be the number 4 seed in the division. Whether they win, they are still not going to have as many wins as the Bears. And whether they lose, they are the division winners for the NFC East. So they stay in the number 4 slot. So chances are Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, Ezekiel Elliott, they're not going to play this coming week against the Giants. And also, the last team I wanted to mention is Seattle Seahawks. Yes, technically, whether they win or lose, it depends where they end up, but they are making the playoffs no matter what as a wild card. So if they win, they get to play against the Dallas Cowboys. If they lose, they get to play against either the Rams or the Chicago Bears. So depending on where they're feeling, they want to go. They don't really have anything to play for. I'm not sure if they're going to even play their players. So just keep your eye on that. And when it comes to the other teams, specifically in the AFC, the Chiefs, the Texans, the Patriots, the Chargers. Actually, I think every single team in the AFC is playing for positioning. Not a single one has a maintained position. A lot of them have made the playoffs, but a lot of them also can try to work to try to get that first round bye. I think, in fact, there's a chance that the Patriots have locked in the number 2 spot because they've beaten the Texans, but I'll keep you guys updated. Look, that's just the thing, though, right? Many of these players might not play this coming week because of the fact that it's Week 17. They've already clinched playoffs, and they have no reason to play. But either way, just wanted to point those out to you. Those three teams, the Saints, the Cowboys, and the Seahawks, they really don't have much to play for because they are already in the playoffs. And whether they win or lose, they're really not going to change any future outcomes. So anyway, let's get into it. Let's talk about our Week 17 running back waiver wire additions. Now, like I mentioned all of last week, or not all of last week, more like Saturday and Sunday. During the live stream, I mentioned this multiple times. If, in fact, Todd Gurley was going to be out, it was going to be C.J. Anderson that would be the number 1 backup. They went and they had signed him last week. Many of us had thought, okay, it's going to be John Kelly. I got information on Friday saying that Sean McVay, the coach of the Rams, came out and said we are comfortable with C.J. Anderson being the backup running back and getting majority of the carries this coming Sunday. So to let everybody know, I had a little asterisk in the bottom right. It was literally under me the entire weekend that if, in fact, Todd Gurley is out, even though Todd Gurley was my number 1 running back, if he was out, C.J. Anderson would be the play. So hopefully you guys took advantage of that, picked up C.J. Anderson, put him on your bench, and if, in fact, when you heard, because we all know Todd Gurley didn't play, around 11:30-ish, the information came out, a.m., at least my time on Sunday, that Todd Gurley was not going to play. C.J. Anderson stepped in, had 167 rushing yards and a touchdown against the Cardinals defense that is terrible against the run. That's mainly why I had Todd Gurley at number 1, because I knew the Cardinals couldn't stop the run. I just didn't think C.J. Anderson was going to be that big of a monster, but either way, I'm sure he won some championships. He won me a championship this weekend in one of my leagues, so he definitely did me some justice. Now, especially going into this week, they play against the 49ers, and they need to win this game, because if in fact the Rams do lose this week and the Bears claim a victory against the Vikings, the Rams are not going to have a first-round bye. So they are definitely playing for something. All starters on the Rams will be going this week, unless they really don't want our first-round bye. But I doubt that. I doubt I'm pretty sure they want a first-round bye so they can get Gurley healthy, get everybody ready. So C.J. Anderson is the number 1 running back pickup this week. If he's not picked up in your league, you must have him rostered. I mean, he's the starting running back of a team. And how many weeks do we have where we can just pick up random guys that are automatic starters? And especially a guy coming off of such a great performance. So C.J. Anderson, he's my number 1 suggestion for this week. Number 2 is Rod Smith. Now, many of you might not know who Rod Smith is, but he is the backup to Ezekiel Elliott. And like I mentioned a little bit before, the Cowboys are not playing their starters this week. Whether they win or lose, they are still the number 4 seed in the NFC. So Ezekiel Elliott is most likely not going to play. Barring on probably 99% sure he is not going to play. And Rod Smith is the backup. So if in fact you are an Ezekiel Elliott owner, you need to have his handcuff. You need to be able to pick, unless there's a better option you have sitting on your bench. He's going to get some yards. He's going to be able to play. The Giants, like I've mentioned before in the past, they are not great against the run, even though this past week they gave Marlon Mack all he could handle. Either way, Marlon Mack should have had 3 touchdowns that game. If you watch the Giants versus Colts game, even though it was a closer game than we thought, Marlon Mack should have had 3 touchdowns. And so, okay, I'll get into that later. But either way, Rod Smith, as of right now, because of Ezekiel Elliott probably not playing, he is a good suggestion. So he's my number 2 this week. Number 3, Rex Burkhead. If in fact the Patriots think, hey, you know what, no big deal. I think Patriots for sure have the tiebreaker. I just want to go ahead and confirm this. I want to go ahead and confirm this. I'll be able to confirm it in about 10 seconds. Time me. Look at the bottom. Look at the little. Okay, here we go. So here we go. So as of right now, the Texans are 10-5 and the Patriots are 10-5. Now, even though the Patriots hold the tiebreaker over the Texans, if in fact the Texans can beat the Jaguars this week and the Patriots lose to the Jets this week, the Jets have been looking great offensively as of late also. The Texans would be the number 2 seed in the AFC. So the Patriots will be playing this week. Rex Burkhead, is he that big of a play? Not anymore. Now that I'm looking at this, I'm probably thinking Rex Burkhead, not so much. So either way, we're moving on. Legit, no kidding. We're moving on. Number 4, we have Darren Sproles, who looked great this past week. Had a lot of work in the passing game. I mean, even though he's hurt majority of the season, the Eagles have looked great as of late. I don't know what it is. There's something with Nick Foles being a part of that offense where it makes everybody want to play better and step up, and that's exactly what's happened. The running back position for the Eagles this season, it's been injury after injury, and as of right now, Darren Sproles looks to be the lead back there, and he's been contributing well. And this week, they need to pick up an absolute win against the Washington Redskins in order to get into the playoffs. And obviously, they need the Vikings to lose to the Bears this week, but I think they have a good chance. So Darren Sproles, if he is available and you are in need of running back help, he's my number 4. Number 5, Jeff Wilson Jr. He plays against the Rams this week, and we've seen it. The 49ers are trying to compete, and they're trying to play upset special. The last 2 weeks, they've beaten the Seattle Seahawks, and they only lost by 5 points against the Bears. So they've been playing better and better. My suggestion is Jeff Wilson Jr. because Matt Breida is done for the season. The starting running back for the 49ers, again, another injury took place this weekend. So Jeff Wilson Jr. going forward will be the starting running back of that team, and he could be a good play going forward, especially in this week. My number 6 suggestion, Brian Hill. Now, Brian Hill is the running back for the Atlanta Falcons. This past week, Tevin Coleman went down with a little bit of an injury, and Brian Hill came in with like a handful of carries. I think he had about 10 carries for 100 rushing yards. Looked pretty good. Plays against the Buccaneers, who aren't great against the running back position, they're not great defensively. So Brian Hill, if you're playing in a deeper league and you're in need of help at the running back position, he's not a bad pickup. Lastly, I want to go to Rashaad Penny. Like I mentioned before, the Seahawks, they really don't have much to play for unless they really care on who they play in the playoffs. Either way, they're playing away. So as of right now, Rashaad Penny coming off of injury. The quote from Pete Carroll, the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, is that Rashaad Penny's going to see a lot of work this week. So they'll probably get him in there in Week 17 to get him some reps, get him back into the groove. And I'm pretty sure they're not going to play Chris Carson or Russell Wilson. So it's going to be a run-heavy game against the Cardinals. And to be honest, that's all they need. The Cardinals can't stop the run. And Rashaad Penny could have a really, really big week this week. So he's my last suggestion at the running back position. Before I move on to the wide receivers, again, I shouldn't have to reiterate this, but if in fact Derrick Henry, Jamaal Williams, Damien Williams, or Elijah McGuire are available in your league, these are guys that should not be available. They shouldn't be available. But if in fact they are, okay, and your league has a bunch of people sleeping at the wheel, they must be picked up. What I wanted to mention earlier when I was talking about Rod Smith, I talked about Marlon Mack. He should have had 3 touchdowns this past week. At the 1-yard line, they threw the ball for twice for 2 touchdowns. Andrew Luck just play action passed, and one to Chester Rodgers and another one to another receiver on the Indianapolis Colts. Those were pretty much stolen from Marlon Mack. He could have had an extra 2 touchdowns, but I digress. Also, Derrick Henry this past week. Many of you may be thinking, well, we saw an average Derrick Henry. Yeah, that's not bad. 16 points, that's not bad at all. He, in fact, if you had watched the game, he should have had 2 more touchdowns. On the 1-yard line, with Blaine Gabbert at quarterback, they ran a play action in which the tight end was wide open. They threw a touchdown. They could have handed that ball off to Derrick Henry easily. He potentially could have scored there. On top of it, they had a play in which they pitched the ball to Derrick Henry, and he tried to throw a touchdown. So it was pretty much a pitch to a pass. He overthrew the wide receiver by a couple yards. Could have been another touchdown. Just saying. Anyway, so for those of you who are pissed at Marlon Mack, Derrick Henry performances, yeah, you shouldn't be. They had the opportunities. They squandered on them. All right, let's talk about wide receivers really quickly. Now, I'm being a little general here because really, I mean, I don't even know if these guys are available in your leagues. That's really the reasoning. Okay, so the number one suggestion for this week is Falcons wide receivers. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean Mohamed Sanu and Calvin Ridley specifically. If those two are available in your league, we saw them in this last week, just completely go off, right? And so did Julio Jones. Julio Jones had himself a touchdown, even though he was questionable all week with that injury. Still ended up having about 10 points in fantasy. But Mohamed Sanu and Calvin Ridley, both of them had over 70 yards receiving each and a touchdown. So going forward into this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a matchup within the division, if in fact the Falcons are playing Matt Ryan and these two receivers, they should be picked up and potentially played this week, especially if you have guys that are on your team like Michael Thomas that aren't playing. This could be a good pickup. So those are those two receivers. Now, I just want to go and find that. Okay, so the next thing, okay? The Colts are playing against the Titans. I've mentioned in the past that the Titans cornerbacks, they're not great. Okay. Now, the only issue is that the Colts wide receivers, besides T.Y. Hilton, they're a little bit, lower end wide receivers. We know T.Y. Hilton, but we also know that T.Y. Hilton has been dealing with injuries for the last couple weeks. And, that's definitely not good. If he is to have a setback this week, there's a potential that, T.Y. Hilton may not play. There's always a chance there. So if in fact that is the case, guys like Chester Rodgers, let's see here, Dontrell, Inman, especially Inman, in the last couple of weeks has been coming on. These are two guys that could be picked up and played. Specifically, I probably like Chester Rodgers a little bit more, plays in that slot position and sees more targets and has been seeing more targets all season long. So as of right now, between the two, I probably go and pick up a guy like Chester Rodgers if you're in need of a wide receiver 3-ish or flex this coming week. So yeah, those are my suggestions from the Colts team. Moving on to number 3, the Packers. The Packers this last week, man, that was a shootout, right, against the Jets. A lot of fantasy points were earned that game, and really that game itself probably won some championships. Just offensively, Aaron Rodgers completely lost his mind. I thought he'd be good, but I didn't think he'd be that good. He completely lost his mind and had himself a great game. On top of it, Jamaal Williams had a game. The wide receivers of the Packers team, besides Devontae Adams, who had a decent week himself, even though he had, 18 targets and 10-plus receptions, didn't really end up with a high number of yards, which kind of hurt him fantasy-wise, but still ended up with his 16 points. But other than him, guys like Marquez Valdes-Scantling contributed a lot. Economius St. Brown had himself some good amount of yards. And so did, is it Kumaro? Yeah, there's a kid named Kumaro who came off the IR a couple weeks back, who was a little bit of a preseason stud. Those kind of guys this coming week, if Aaron Rodgers is playing, could be good pickups. Moving on, number 4, Buccaneers wide receivers. If in fact, somehow, some way, Adam Humphries is still available in your league, holy shit. This dude had 10 receptions this last week. 10 receptions. I mean, you got to be kidding me. And against the Falcons defense, I know the Falcons defense as of late, in the last 2 weeks, especially in fantasy, their defense has been putting up a lot of points because they've been causing a lot of turnovers. And I'm sure Jameis Winston's going to turn over the ball. But then again, I'm also sure that Jameis Winston can get the ball into the end zone. So if Adam Humphries or maybe DeSean Jackson's available in your league, they're not bad plays against the Falcons defense either. And the last team that I wanted to mention when it comes to the wide receiver position, the Eagles, another team that's playing for all of it, right? They're playing to try to get their team into the playoffs, try to get another run going. Guys like Nelson Agholor, if he's specifically available, I mean, he's getting more targets than Golden Tate. Golden Tate is pretty much worthless at this point. So, I know Nelson Agholor had a 98-yard touchdown. I understand that. But he also had another 6 targets earlier throughout that game that present a lot of value. So if he's getting targeted a lot, other than Alshon Jeffrey and Zach Ertz, because we know teams are going to try to focus down on those two, and Nelson Agholor could be a good wide receiver to target this coming week. And those are the wide receivers. I mean, other than those guys, there wasn't really names that popped out this week at the wide receiver position. Truth be told, it's just I don't really want to suggest guys like, let's say, for example, Traquan Smith for the Saints. That's not a bad play. But then again, is Teddy Bridgewater going to get it done with him? I don't know. We'll see. But either way, there's also guys like Zay Jones, who sometimes shows up, maybe Rashad Higgins. I've mentioned Kumaro, maybe Jamison Crowder playing against the secondary of the Eagles this coming week. That has been a little bit sketchy going forward. Ted Ginn Jr. has not been bad, but is he going to play this week? That is the question. Kendrick Bourne for the 49ers now that Dante Pettis is hurt, perhaps even Marquise Goodwin. Those are the names. Either way, we're moving on. Let's go talk about some quarterbacks, shall we? All right, now, number 1, I just wanted to go ahead. I got to pull this up. I really do. I should have had this queued up a little bit before, but we're going to do that right now. Let's see here, shall we? Okay, so number 1 at the quarterback position, my number 1 suggestion for this week is Nick Foles. Now, I wanted to go ahead and shout somebody out because earlier on in the week, a guy on the comment section, Al Ford, a guy that's been around the channel for a while, has donated, been really active within the community. Al Ford, commented on my quarterback video saying, hey, Nick Foles should be a top 10 quarterback this week. And I was thinking, and I literally responded, top 10, LOL. Okay. I'm pretty sure I can name 10 better quarterbacks this week. I understand he won the MVP of the Super Bowl last season, but there are better options. Okay. Now, either way, that happened. Nick Foles ended up having a 38-point fantasy game. Probably won a couple of some championships. Won Al Ford a championship for sure. But either way, I wanted to shout him out and say, goodness gracious, great call. Great call. Didn't expect Nick Foles to have a 38-point game, but hey, I guess we can't sleep on him. Dude, honestly, he should be the starting quarterback of the Eagles going forward. I'm sorry, but they just play better when he's the starting quarterback. It's not even close. All right, anyway, Nick Foles, my number 1 quarterback waiver wire pickup, if in fact you are in need of quarterback because, Russell Wilson or Drew Brees isn't, or Dak Prescott, they're probably not going to play this week. So Nick Foles, good pickup. Moving on, number 2, Sam Darnold. What has Sam Darnold been on about? But listen, he has been playing out of his mind. This is not the Sam Darnold of earlier this season. This dude had a break. He had a little bit of an injury. He came back, and, man, he's just throwing touchdowns left, right, and center. Threw 3 touchdowns each of the last 2 weeks. And playing against the Patriots this week, Patriots defense, yes, they could be, tough here and there. But to be honest, I think Sam Darnold can figure it out. I mean, he's just been making plays. And if, in fact, the Patriots fall asleep here or there, him and Robbie Anderson will make them pay. So Sam Darnold is my number 2 suggestion at the quarterback position. Number 3, Eli Manning. This potentially could be Eli Manning's last game. That being said, they play against the Cowboys this week. And to be honest, if this is his last game, they're going to try to pick up a win for Eli. And with the Cowboys probably not starting majority of their starters offensively and defensively this coming week, it could be Eli just blowing open the gates or Saquon just completely running amok. But I think Eli can contribute, and he could potentially have a good week this week. Number 4, Teddy Bridgewater for the Saints. He's the backup quarterback to Drew Brees. I know Taysom Hill gets some snaps here and there, throw some interceptions here and there, but Teddy Bridgewater would be the second-string quarterback of this team. He plays against the Panthers this week. I cut it off with my box right here, but they play against the Panthers, and potentially he could have a good week. He could beat the Panthers without Cam Newton. Their backup quarterback, what is that damn kid's name? Man, he got hurt too, which is actually ridiculous. Heineke? I think it's Heineke. I'm not even going to look it up. He was turning over the ball left, right, and center. So there's a potential that Teddy Bridgewater, who honestly could be a starting quarterback in this league next season, could figure it out and have himself a good week against Panthers defense. Moving on to the last quarterback I wanted to mention, Derek Carr. Goodness, man. They gave an ass whooping to the Broncos yesterday. And the last time we saw Derek Carr play against the Chiefs, yes, it was in the black hole, but they put up 30 points, and they were competing with the Kansas City Chiefs defense, who is just not that great. So there's a chance that Derek Carr this week, if you're thin at the quarterback position, could be a good pickup against the Chiefs defense. I know they play better at home, but you never know. So those are my 5 suggestions at the quarterback position for Week 17. The last 2 positions, but let's talk about tight ends really quickly. Again, all right, Week 16 was probably the best week for the tight end position all season long, to be honest. Really quickly, a stat I wanted to mention underneath me right here. In Week 16, 14 tight ends scored 9 or more fantasy points in half-point PPR scoring formats. Now, just to understand, there were 14 tight ends this week that completely went off. Zach Ertz and Kyle Rudolph were the 2 that had 26-plus points each, right? But goodness gracious, man. And this is also including a week in which Gronkowski, yes, Rob Gronkowski, had 0 total points. Yeah, imagine that. And there were still 14 tight ends with 9 or more points in half-point PPR scoring. Was Kittle even on this list? Yeah, Kittle barely made it with 10 points, but still had himself a good week. Other than that, man, this is also Travis Kelce not included. So we're not including Travis Kelce, and we're also not including Trey Burton or Rob Gronkowski. Who else is on this? Jimmy Graham's not on this list. No Vance McDonald. No Austin Hooper. No Eric Ebron. Okay. Yet we still had, Rudolph, Andrews, Herndon, Njoku, Engram, Samuels in some of your leagues, Uzomah, Ian Thomas, Ed Dixon somehow figured it out. Darren Fells, Kittle, have a bunch of great weeks. So this coming week, suggestions. If Evan Ingram's not picked up, shame on you. He should have been picked up 4 weeks ago. I've been talking about this guy at the tight end position. No, not 4 weeks ago. Maybe 2 weeks ago. Maybe 3. I've been mentioning his name every week for the last couple weeks. It needs to be picked up because I'm telling you, the Giants are going to try to win against the Cowboys this weekend. They probably will. And Evan Ingram is going to be a big part of that, especially if Odell keeps missing games. Number 2, Chris Herndon had himself a damn good week. As I was mentioning before, Sam Darnold and that offense, they've been clicking, and they continue to find themselves finding the end zone quite often, to be honest. So Chris Herndon this week against the Patriots could be another good game. Ian Thomas, number 3, playing against the Saints. If all the starters for the Saints, offensively and defensively, are pulled, which I expect them to be, there's a potential that the Panthers could score some points this week. So Ian Thomas at the tight end position could be a good play. Number 4, Kyle Rudolph. He had a great week. 9 receptions, 122 yards, 2 touchdowns. Yes, one was a Hail Mary. So be it. 28 fantasy points. He had the best game of his entire season perhaps of his entire career statistically. I honestly think he's scored more points this week than in the last 7 weeks combined. Let me see here. That's 4, that's 10, that's 20, that's 26. Yeah. So he scored more points this week than in the last 7 weeks combined. So, yeah, it may be a little bit imploded, but if he continues to see targets and if he's available and you're struggling, not a bad play. Also, Mark Andrews of the Ravens playing against the Browns. Browns not that great against the tight end position if he continues to see targets. There's also guys like I mentioned earlier. Let's see here. CJ Uzomah, who finally caught his first touchdown. I mean, the guy was a 3-point monster every single week. Caught himself a touchdown, ended up being somewhat reliable this week. But looking at these other names, man, I just can't trust these guys. So that's pretty much it at the tight end position. Let's move on to the last part of this episode where we talk about some defenses that we may want to stream. Number 1 is Philadelphia. Now, you may be thinking, dude, they just gave up a lot of points to Deshaun Watson and that Houston Texans team. I understand that. But then again, they caused some turnovers here and there, and they're playing for their playoff lives. And I think they can come out and they can really make this team hurt. Last time they played against the Eagles, if I'm not mistaken, it was the game that Colt McCoy had got injured, and they just took advantage of Mark Sanchez. This coming week, I know Josh Johnson's been playing better. I know he's trying to give his team, as much of an opportunity as he can to win games, but I think the Eagles will be able to take advantage of him. Could be a good waiver wire start at the defensive position. On top of that, the next suggestion, the Los Angeles Chargers playing against the Broncos. Broncos have lost 3 in a row. After beating the Chargers and the Pittsburgh Steelers in back-to-back weeks, they have somehow lost to the Raiders, the 49ers, and the Browns in 3 consecutive weeks. Great job, Broncos. So this week, the Chargers trying to also get a first-round bye going into the playoffs. They're going to be playing tough against the Broncos, so they're another suggestion. The Houston Texans defense. I know they gave up a lot of points against the Eagles this past week, but Cody Kessler is getting absolutely manhandled. The pass rush is getting to him every single time, and he's just getting beat up. He had to leave the game due to an injury. They had to get Blake Bortles in this past week, and they just offensively, all they want to do is run the ball. That may work against the Texans. I doubt it, but as of right now, I think Cody Kessler's probably going to turn over the ball a couple times and or not be able to move the ball down the field much. The last defense I wanted to mention may not be owned. Atlanta Falcons defense. I know they've been causing turnovers, and Jameis Winston's not prone of throwing himself a couple interceptions here or there or fumble. So they could end up taking one back to the house, but that's in fact if you're thinking that the Falcons are going to just completely destroy the Bucs. Otherwise, I think it's going to be competitive, and it's going to really depend on the Falcons trying to, force some turnovers in order to get you some points. And that's pretty much it. Off the top of my head, other than that, there's not really much else. You guys may have some suggestions that you can throw up into the comment section. Either way, that's pretty much it. Because there is no Thursday night football, and also there is no Saturday night football, or Saturday football at all. Every game is going to be on Sunday this week, so I have a lot of time to answer your questions. I've also, I took the day off yesterday because the holidays, family, stuff like that. So, yes, today is Christmas Day, but I'm home. I might as well put out a video for those of you who are in a Week 17 championship game. So tomorrow we'll be running backs, and then subsequently every day wide receivers, quarterbacks, and then if you guys want a live stream on Saturday, we can do that. Otherwise, I'll just put one for Sunday. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you, everybody, for watching. Happy holidays. And I'll see you guys tomorrow with running back rankings. So, see you guys. Peace.